The future of progressive radio. This is the Dean Obadala Show on SiriusXM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live right here, Monday, February 4th, talking about Ralph Northam in passionate terms. Clearly, we just had Daniel Moody Mills joining me now for the hour. Legal guru. We're talking about some legal stuff, but we'll start with this one. Our friend Elie Mystal, lawyer and editor of Above the Law. Prior to joining ATL, Above the Law, he was a popular culture writer. Is that true? And politics at City Hall News and New York Press.
What a week in white people.
What a week in white people. So, by the way, someone called up here and made a really good point and said, it's interesting that people on the right would define all, like Muslims by the worst example and all black people and Latinos. But we don't define all white people by the worst example. People aren't going, Ralph Northam, another white, this is what white people do. Yeah. What do you expect? Yeah. But it's funny you said that, what a week in white people.
And Liam Neeson today.
Oh, that was
just hurting my heart.
That one is, let's not even bring that up, because that one, no, because that is a weird, look, I mean, and that might be someone you can say didn't get caught. He just revealed something about himself, which was stunning. I had to read it twice. I'm like, what did you, but he goes, look, it's a long time ago.
Why did you say that part out loud?
I know, and it was so many years ago. I'm not going to I don't want to get into that. I want to stick to politics here and not pop culture for a second, but all right, so what is and I just told Elie in the break about some of the calls we got earlier from African Americans, Charles and Claudette and others, saying, I don't think Ralph Northam should resign over this. It was years ago, and other political reasons as well, that Democrats saying that we don't stand up for each other the way we should. We're so easy to get rid of each other without actually taking time and looking at the issue in more nuance. What's your reaction?
Yeah, so here's my problem with the "it was 35 years ago" argument. I'm sorry. Here are my three problems with the "it was 35 years ago" argument.
Okay.
Right? First of all, I was alive 35 years ago. I had people in my community dressing up as Pac-Man, not Klansman. Right. All right, like this is not so long ago that you can easily put yourself in the it was a different time and place. It was 1984. People knew that blackface was not appropriate. People knew that taking photos with Klansmen were not appropriate. When he talks about, and I've seen, I think Al Sharpton actually has made this point the best so far. When he's talking about, if we are to believe him now, when he's talking about going in blackface to dress up as Michael Jackson, Al Sharpton makes a good point. If you remember 1984, this was a charged time in Michael Jackson's ascendancy. It was the time of Michael Jackson. It was the time of Jesse Jackson. It was the time of white people being very afraid that black people were kind of culturally taking over. And so to wear blackface as you're impersonating Michael Jackson, this is not a child's Halloween costume. No. This was a purposeful degradation of Michael Jackson and the cultural moment that he was in. It wasn't like he was dressing up as Black Panther because he liked Black Panther, right? He was trying to make a statement in 1984. And that's before we even get into Coon Man, right? So problem number one, just because it was 35 years ago does not mean it was that long ago.
Right.
Problem number two, again, if we are to believe the man's own idiot mouth.
Let's hear this clip about Michael Jackson so everyone can hear his exact. It's a short clip. Clip number 2.
From my clear memory of other mistakes I made in the same period of my life. That same year, I did participate in a dance contest in San Antonio, in which I darkened my face as part of a Michael Jackson costume. I look back now and regret that I did not understand the harmful legacy of an action like that. It is because my memory of that episode is so vivid that I truly do not believe I am in the picture in my yearbook.
That is just the lie. He knew exactly what he was doing in 1984 when he did that. He was not part of a Michael Jackson tribute band. Okay, he was trying to make fun of a black person in 1984. So, one. Number two, again, according to his own mouth, if we are to believe it, he did not fully understand and appreciate the depths of the harm and racism that he was a part of until he was on the campaign trail with his magic black friend Seth in 2017. Seth was the one who's like, yeah, I would find putting on black faces to be pretty offensive. Right. That's when he says in his own mouth that he really started to understand how dangerous, how bad it was what he did, right? That's 2017. That's not 1984. That's last year when he was running for office. So if you are running for office and you for the first time in your life, apparently, figure out that blackface is really not that good of an idea? Do you, A, hide it and make sure none of the black people who you desperately need to vote for you ever find out, or B, come clean in 2017 before the election during the primary when people have a choice and say like, hey, I did this. I just learned from Seth that this was a bad thing for me to do. I'm a changed man. I'm a different person. Can you forgive me? That is something that people could have gotten behind. That is forgiveness. That is redemption. That is giving the voters of Virginia, especially the black voters of Virginia who was basing his hopes on.
Sure.
That is giving them the choice to figure out whether or not they forgive him. It is not, and this is a deeper kind of critical race theory cut, but if you are white and you screw up, it is not on you to demand forgiveness. That is not how it works. It is on others to offer forgiveness. And Ralph Northam did not give the black voters of Virginia an opportunity to offer forgiveness when he himself in 2017 realized the depths of the idiocy that he participated in, right? So that's number two. And then number three, this just goes back to like basic, and like, look, I happen to be Catholic. I'm non-practicing, and when I was raised Catholic, I do not know of any redemptive tradition, whether it be spiritually or secularly, that contemplates true forgiveness and true redemption without first standing for account for your sins. That's just not in any philosophy that I am aware of.
Okay.
If Ralph Northam resigns, loses this job, it will be the first time in his life that he has been held accountable for his racist actions of the past. People are acting like, and as some African-American people are acting like, oh, well, he's paid for it. He hasn't paid this debt. He has not been paying this debt for 35 years. He's been paying it for 36 hours.
Right.
All right. If he actually had to lose a job behind it, that would be the first time that he paid a price and was held accountable for his actions. Because let me tell you, again, based on his own statements, doesn't sound like this is the only time. Right, whether or not he's in the picture, when bro says, you know how difficult it is to get shoe polish off your face. No, sir, I do not.
Absolutely, I agree with that. And Friday night, we were live on the air, and the statement comes out where he says, I'm deeply sorry for the decision I made to appear as I did in this photo. He meant this one, not the one with the pickup truck.
Right.
Like, this was the photo. There was no disputing it. And he was being honest here. This is clearly he was being honest. This is not calculated. I'm going to pretend honest. No. This was, people go berserk. People, even his mentor who brought him into politics, LeVar Stoney, who is now the mayor of Richmond, who's African-American, he was then in the Virginia Democratic Party. He's the one that brought Ralph Northam into politics. He even said, you got to resign publicly. So there was no one left. So then he went to plan B, which is like, I'm going to deny it now.
Right.
How could you think, forget even being a lawyer, as just in the real world, if for some bizarre reason Friday was actually untrue, why would you ever say this and come back Saturday without giving a detailed explanation of unbelievable, because we know why. You saw this picture and you knew you were in blackface and you knew this is you, or pretty close to something that looks just like you that someone else is going to find of you pretty soon.
You knew it could have been you.
Right. That's the thing. Right. How do you,
I see a photo of me in blackface. I know it can't be me. Right.
There is a picture of me in whiteface. I was Dracula. So my mom, when I was a kid, made me whiter to look ghostly.
But it's like, if I see a photo of me on the moon, I'm not like, oh, does that mean? No, I'm not Neil Armstrong. I know that. Right. So, and then the other thing, and this goes to my third and final point here. We're focusing on the blackface because at some level, that's the ridiculous part. He was in the blackface, then he wasn't, but he was blackface in San Antonio. He's got a picture in his yearbook with a Klansman. Right. With somebody dressed as a Klansman. That is the thing that's like, that's the end of this scene, right? At the point where you have a yearbook photo and a yearbook page, and there is a Klansman on it, and you do not know that, and you do not take action to correct it, that you're over, you're done. Because if you think about one of the things my mother actually pointed out, and somebody else said on Twitter too, but my mom said it first to me.
Okay, good.
Was, honey, where did they find a Klan outfit in 1984? Which is a good point, right? They weren't selling it in the bookstore.
No.
Somebody had to either go in their closet and get one from Granddaddy, or maybe just Daddy,
Right.
Or somebody had to like lovingly like sew that together, right? Somebody had to bedazzle that, right? Somebody had to put effort into making a Klan outfit in 1984. That's over. That's done. Everybody knew. Besides the fact that everybody knew that blackface was bad in 1984, everybody knew that the Ku Klux Klan was bad in 1984.
Me and Danielle were talking about the Klan outfit fit pretty well on that guy too. That wasn't like it wasn't like a caricature of a Klan outfit. It was a Klan outfit. Like if he was mocking the Klan like Ralph Northam did by wearing blackface of black people, if this guy was wearing it like I'm a moron Klan guy and I got whatever all the ridiculous, then you're like, oh, I get it. It's ironic or it's parody of it. No, he wore it. I'm looking at the picture right now. Yeah. It fits very well.
As if the younger listeners will know, that's not a costume. That's cosplay. Right? That is, you went to Comic-Con like that, bro.
So there's no, and I mean, are you at all stunned? And I wish some of the African Americans that I spoke to earlier would actually be here, because Danielle could not believe what I told her. And I was just sharing that some people called up and said, hey, he shouldn't go. And he's African American. And from Virginia and from the South. And
I believe it.
And why do you think that?
There are lots of reasons. First of all, just straight up, the African American community is not a monolith. I mean,
obviously.
there are lots.
But they're liberals. Believe me, they're all listening to this show. They're progressive African Americans, so it's similar subsect.
Right, but even African Americans as a subset within the Democratic Party tend to actually be relatively conservative or centrist within the Democratic Party, except for issues on race. It is because we're just like, oh, and you shouldn't be able to shoot me, that we get pushed into like the radical bin. But for the most part, and I look, I'm not trying to overgeneralize. Sure. Again, my whole point is that African Americans are not monoliths. So anyway, just from a conservative liberal thing, yes, they are Democratic voters. Doesn't mean they're like super crazy progressives, right? So that's one reason. The other reason is that, as you say, some of them were from the South, as far as you could tell.
Yeah.
My mother's from Mississippi, born in 1950 in Mississippi. There's a different kind of. I'm struggling for the right word, but
I have an idea where you're going.
There is a way that you get somewhat used to this, right? That you get, I don't want to say desensitized, but like, my mom, for instance, has had to deal with racism and oppression that I cannot imagine. Right. Some of the stuff that my mom would have to deal with to go to school when she finally was allowed to go to an integrated school are stuff that would stop me. Like I wouldn't have kept going. Right. So like there some with that kind of past in history, you build up kind of like a thicker skin to this, right? I'm sure for a lot of African American people in Virginia, in the South, look, honey, blackface is just the thing that white people do sometimes, right? And like they understand that at a different level than like a younger African American like me who grew up in New York. Well, like, that's so obviously like, how dare you, sir? How dare you?
Right.
In different time, different places, kind of like, oh, well, he's one of those, but that doesn't mean he's a bad guy, right? So there is that sense that, so I can put it like this, I can believe that there are people who are saying, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I understand that kind of perspective. All I'm saying is that you have to really look at all of the other opportunities that Ralph Northam had to correct this problem before Friday. Once we get to Friday, he's done. He had multiple opportunities before Friday to correct this, to do something about it. I mean, we haven't really even talked about Coon Man, which is his, call sign in the military.
Right, which was interesting.
Which is...
But also think about it in a way. Well, to your point, though, you were just making, I see a similar thing within the Muslim American community among immigrant Muslims versus those born here. My father's generation was born in the Middle East. It's just like, get along, let's not make any problems. We're just lucky to be here type of attitude. So people could say whatever they want. Maybe they get upset. The ones born here like me and raised here, we're angry. And the younger ones younger than me are really
right.
It's like Malcolm X. We're all Malcolm X of the younger generation.
I mean, look, bottom line, and I am a beneficiary of this. Anger is a privilege. It is a male privilege. It is a wealth privilege. It's a socioeconomic privilege, and it's a privilege of youth, right? Like I am. I'm old, and you see my hair. I'm old, but I am, relatively speaking, young enough, privileged enough, economically secure enough that I can afford to be pissed off about various things. Right? You put me in a different time, in a different place. You've got more immediate concerns that don't allow for rage, for retribution, for accountability. You've got to kind of make it through the next day, and so again, coming from that, I don't come from that perspective. Having been raised by people who did come from that perspective, I do understand a little bit how, this all seems like a heavy price to pay for something that lots of white people did. All I'm trying to remind people is that he has not paid a price yet.
Okay.
Right? So far, there is no price. Let him pay a price, and then we'll see. I mean, we were talking in the break, he resigns now. Then, if he wants to run for office later, maybe he can't run for governor, but he can run for state senator, he can run for Congress, whatever. Give African-American voters, give liberal voters, give the people of Virginia a chance to vote for him or not now that they know this information. Right? Because he always knew this information. He just didn't tell nobody. Once people have the opportunity to understand this information and put this information in the context of his larger career, well, maybe then we can have a different conversation. But right now, he's in a job that he got through false pretenses, and he needs to quit that job. He needs to leave that job so that or else he's a fraud.
It's very well put, my friend. No, it is. And, and I want to hear from people in the African-American community to talk about this issue. I think you should be leading. I think I should be listening. And the same way I hope that when there's issues involving Muslims, Fox News will have like 5 white guys talking about Muslims all the time. They do it all the time. They don't give a shit about us. But at least MS or CNN will sometimes have some of us on. Sometimes. I'm not even going to get into all of it.
And I don't want to hear from Republicans on this. I saw you talking a little bit with Danielle about this. Like, Republicans, the hypocrisy is dripping off of them.
Right. Well, we just touched on to call out the bullshit because it's going on Fox News now, the holier than thou. Ralph Northam's horrible. How could the Democrats? And one thing, by the way, the person who had the yearbook of Ralph Northam was his classmate who had it all this time and only was so upset with Ralph Northam because he was talking about a bill that would reduce restrictions on third trimester abortions, which the bill was going nowhere. It died in subcommittee, but didn't matter. Him just talking about it and the right-wing media speeding it as he wanted infanticide. Is that the way? Infanticide, where you could kill babies, which you can't do. That's called murder, folks. You can't do that. And that's what got this guy who's been sitting on this yearbook all this time watching Ralph Northam run for state senate, watching him be lieutenant governor, and now watching him win. Didn't even bring it up during the campaign. Right. But this was the line that he goes, I got to show you my yearbook now.
And it's weird to me, relatively speaking, Ed Gillespie, who is the Republican opponent, has been relatively quiet on this. And I would like to point out that Ed Gillespie ran one of the most racist campaigns that you can run in the context of 2018. Like, he ran a straight up racially divisive campaign. And so there's a part of me that's just like, I can't wait for somebody to find me Ed Gillespie's old BS, right?
But it's weird about Gillespie
because I need these Republicans to get off my lawn.
But you know that Gillespie in the race of the GOP primary was Corey Stewart, who was his whole campaign was defend the Confederate statues, Confederate flag. And Ed Gillespie defeats him because he's the former GOP chair who's an establishment guy. So establishment people are like, Corey Stewart's crazy. Right. But then you get to the general.
He runs the same campaign.
And he embraces all the crazy crap of Corey Stewart, but he loses because he's got no credibility on it because he's not that guy. Yep. And then Corey Stewart thankfully got destroyed by Tim Kaine in last year's Senate race. So, and Corey Stewart's now resigned until he sees these images and goes, hey, maybe I... All right, let's take a break. We'll come right back with our friend Elie Mystal right after this. And we'll take some calls as well.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
My slogan for Trump in 2020, Trump for prison 2020.
SiriusXM Progress. New perspectives, important voices, influential ideas. This is the Dean Obadala Show on SiriusXM Progress 127.
And welcome back, Dean Obadala Show. We're live right here with our friend Elie Mystal, lawyer, editor. You've seen him on MS, doing a great job all the time. Editor of Above the Law. So, all right, we could. Some of the other calls we'll take earlier, but I wish someone else. If you're African American and you don't think Ralph Northam should step down, we had some calls earlier. I'd love to have, not to fight with Elie, but just so he can hear it firsthand, the why behind it. Although you get it. Danielle could not get it. Danielle's like, oh, what are you talking about? But you actually put it in a way that makes more sense. And to me, it did echo my own community among some people from different parts. Some more of for our lines, the immigrant experience, who are immigrants, even if they're citizens, they're just like, let's just get along. We could be deported any moment. And the ones born here are like, no, we know our rights. We're going to fight. So there's so many things I want to talk about. I want to touch on this thing, another issue. If someone calls on that other issue, we'll get to it. About Donald Trump maybe declaring an emergency to fund the wall and essentially make himself king of America. And because Congress says, no, you can't get Congress to support you, and you go around it and you're going to just allocate $5 billion. It could be $25 billion. $5 billion is just a number. It could be $50 billion. It doesn't really matter, because if you can do it once, you can do it for anything you want. But you wrote a great article that pointed out something no one until the Washington Post about an hour ago has made the point. Tell us the point you made. It's a great point.
Yeah. So if you read Above the Law, you knew this a week ago. But if you don't read Above the Law, you only found it out today, or literally just an hour ago. So in the National Emergencies Act, the thing that Trump would likely use to declare his state of emergency to allow him what he believes is the ability to destroy the separation of powers and allocate money for his wall without a vote of Congress, which would be unconstitutional absent this national emergency. In the actual law, in the statute, there is a mechanism for Congress to terminate, as it's called in the statute, any national emergency. It's by operation of the actual statute that Trump would be using. You have to have a joint resolution. That's a resolution that passes both houses of Congress, so the House and the Senate. It can start in the House, which, if you haven't been paying attention, Democrats control now. A simple majority vote to terminate, and they can take it after 15 days, right? So after 15 days, they can take this vote to terminate the national emergency. After they take this vote, and here's the pièce de résistance. If the House passes this resolution, according to the statute, the Senate has to take it up.
They're forced to take a vote on it. That's remarkable.
They're forced to take a vote on it, right?
I've never heard of this.
They're forced to calendar it, right? So like Mitch McConnell has a lot of parliamentary tricks.
Sure. And
one of his biggest tricks is just to not vote on anything, right? Just to shelve it, to pocket it, to avoid ever having to really have to deal with an issue, right? That's what he's been doing with the shutdown. That's what he did with the shutdown. Like, there were these bills to end the shutdown. He wouldn't let people take a vote on it. By operation of the National Emergencies Act, the Senate has to calendar the vote if the House passes the resolution. Now, sure, it's a supermajority, blah, 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 like you need 60, but there are a lot of Republican senators who don't want this national emergency because they understand the potentially destructive power it has on our nation. So that's why today you start finally to see Republican congressmen trying to warn Trump that he can't do this national emergency because Pelosi will vote it down in the House, and then the Senate is going to have to take it up. And like people like Marco Rubio and Lisa Murkowski and even Susan Collins.
Right, Cory Gardner and Tom Tillis, people in states like North Carolina and Colorado up in 2020.
They don't want to vote on this. They don't want to have to take this vote, but they're unlikely to find 60 votes to give the president unfettered power just because he declares a fake national emergency. So this whole national emergency thing that Trump is talking about, he's trying to point it out as a solution to his problem of not being able to get money for his wall. But it is not a solution for him to get money for his wall because the House can eventually stop it. The only thing it does is that it's bad for America, and I can't put that any more eloquently. Like, national emergency powers are how democracies die. If you look throughout history, the Third Reich was a democratic government. operating under national emergency powers. Julius Caesar was a general operating under national emergency powers. Stalin was operating under this is how democratic self-government is ended in other parts of the world. And in America, I think we're a little bit too, you talk to like philosophers and historians, whatever. In America, we've never lost our democracy. So we don't have like a cultural memory. We don't really understand culturally how such a thing could happen. It's happened to everybody else. Everybody else who's had a democracy has lost it at some point, okay? And this national emergency thing
is the way it goes.
I
had one of the two authors, How Democracies Die On, a few months ago, which is a great book. And
I've read it.
And I've begged Madeleine Albright's people to let her come on and talk about fascism because there's similar books. The idea of showing, in a way, case studies of contemporary nations, not even going back. Yeah. I mean, we're talking about how it chips away at democracy, using democracy. You have Hungary, you have Poland, you have Maduro, Chavez in Venezuela, other Central American examples. But hang on, let's take a call here. Here is Richard's got to answer a question here from Chicago. I know Richard's a good guy. Richard, how are you?
Hey, Dean, what's going on, man?
By the way, Richard, when I saw the movie Green Book, I told my girlfriend that I learned about the real Green Book because of you whenever we talked like a year and a half ago. I mean, we've talked since then, but that when you told me about that book, I never knew existed. So I just wanted to mention I recently saw the movie. So go ahead, Richard. What do you? You're here with our friend Elie Mystal.
What's up?
Hey, Elie, man. Great breakdown on the whole piece with Northam. And Dean knows this. We have a show here in Chicago on WCPT, and we talked about it yesterday as well with Northam. And it was kind of a split. Our panel was some say stay, some say go. And for various reasons, and everybody on the panel is African American, from a clinical psychologist and college professor to a minister, and then the three of us who are the co-hosts of the show. And we kind of came up with this is the take that we took. With what Elie just said was spot on. I mean, it was brilliant how he broke that down. But and along with that, what we said is, if Northam were to stay, it gives the black community leverage, because this is one of the things that a lot of people don't want to talk about. Elie, you know what I'm about to say.
I think so.
A lot of people don't want to talk about the fact the day-to-day racism that goes on, irrespective of political party or political gang, as we like to call it. It happens across the board. There's white boys who are Democrats who are doing racist stuff. There are white boys who are Republicans that are doing racist stuff. We've been trying to say this for decades, if not centuries. So if he stays, it gives the black community leverage to say, okay, you got caught, and if you stay, these are our demands. These are our permanent interests. Here's what you're going to have to be at the tip of the spear to get done.
Yeah, you're not going to...
And you can't hide from it. And, oh, by the way, the next time a white person says, oh, why are you guys playing the race card? What's going on with this black stuff? And why is everybody getting upset? Can't y'all just let it go back, be in the past? No, because this fool got caught. And 1984, I was a senior in college, so it ain't that far along that it happened. So it gives us a little bit of leverage to have a white man who's in power that got caught, that has to stand and deliver, and have to put him on Front Street every single time somebody says it doesn't happen in America. That's one view. That was one direction our panel took. The other direction was his ass should be gone, right, and let the brothers step in and take over and get some stuff done. So, we were really, we kind of went back and forth, and I don't know where we were right or wrong. But I'm just being transparent with Dean, because Dean's always been so cool about. That's kind of how we looked at it. And Elie, I just love how you broke that down. I was just like, damn, I wish I were parked so I could have taken some notes, because I was like, that is so spot on. Because as a black person, you sit back and you go, hey, wait up, man, you haven't had to pay the price. You messed up. You got caught. And now you're about to skate. Oh, no.
Exactly.
You got to pay a price, dude. So, I'm sorry, but we pay a price. And Dean, right, even with this, sort of semi, he always likes to say he got to get away as a white guy until 9/11. Even Dean knows now there's guys who get away with making inappropriate comments about the Muslim community, and then they turn to go, oh, my God, I didn't know you were Muslim, Dean.
Right.
So
well,
we get away with this, and we don't get to hold their feet to the fire. So if he stayed,
all right, Richard, hang on. So what do you think of that theory?
So here's the thing, and what Richard is speaking to is something that I think a lot of white Americans don't understand because of how the black community is portrayed. The black community is an extremely strategic set of voters. Okay.
By the way, Northam got almost 90% of the black vote.
But people use that. People use the stats. People use the stats of the black communities kind of overwhelmingly voting with Democrats to suggest that blacks are not sophisticated. That they're just going to vote for the Democrats and hope for the best. No. Black voters tend to be extremely strategic, and you can see there's so many examples to point out. Like you can see Obama did not have a lot of black support until he won Iowa. And then black people are like, he can get the white people. All right, now we're going to vote for him, right? If you look at it right now, the most friendly fire that Kamala Harris or Cory Booker are taking from the black community, right? So like black people, as writ large, I'm generalizing, unfortunately, but black people tend to think what their best options are. And so part of what's happening, I think Richard's exactly right, with Northam is this feeling of like, we elect these white liberals and then they forget about us. They only remember us every 4 years, right? With Northam, do we have an opportunity to make him, actually care about the African-American community in Virginia, in Newport News, in these places that are usually overlooked by white liberals, even when they are Democrats and they get in office? So that's the argument. I don't agree with it for a couple of reasons. One, I don't like blackmail. I I get it, but like it's blackmail. So I don't like just like the thought of like getting somebody to do something right because you're lording over. Like that's not great. I also don't like hypocrisy, and so it feels a bit hypocritical to be like, okay, well, we'll let our racist white man stay in office because we think we got over him, but we won't let the Republican racist white man stay in office because we know he doesn't care about our needs. When I say obviously, if black people could get rid of Trump for his racism, we would, right?
Sure.
Right. If blackface was enough to get rid of some of these white politicians, we would, right? So it's hypocritical to like, but only Republicans can't do blackface. I think it's better to say all white people can't do blackface, right? And so there's the hypocrisy argument. The third one, and it goes to Richard's point, he made it near the end, there are other people who can lead Virginia. One happens to be the lieutenant governor, but there are other, and this is a general point that I make, that whenever we get into these, like, you see it, seen it mostly with Me Too. Why are Democrats so quick to throw away their heroes, whereas Republicans stand for? Because, well, one of the reasons is because Democrats are more committed to the issues than the people. All right, this is not the party that has become a cult of personality, right? This is the party that has a set of issues, as people have been saying a lot. For instance, with African Americans, we have no permanent enemies, we have no permanent friends, we just have permanent interests. The Democratic Party, in a way, just has permanent interests, right? And so when you say like, how can we spare this man or that man? We can spare them. There are other people ready to lead. There are other people ready to take on the issues that are important to us, and any particular human is not that important. Furthermore, and this is a point that I made a lot during the Franken mess, just because you are no longer in politics, because you are no longer a governor or a senator, does not mean that you cannot have a good life and that you cannot lead and do a lot of good work on issues that are important to you. I myself am not in politics, right? I am not elected for jack, nor will I ever be, right? But that doesn't mean that I can't do what I can to advance the causes and the issues that I care about. So too can Al Franken. So too can Ralph Northam. So too can other politicians who maybe have lost the moral authority to lead, but have not lost the ability to do good works. And so again, I would urge Northam to leave this part of his life behind because he done effed it up.
Right.
But then go and find something else useful to do, because there's a lot of stuff that needs doing. There's a lot of work to be done, and Ralph Northam can still be a friend for that work. He just can't be the face of it right now because his face has shoe polish on it.
Richard, let me ask you a quick question here before we have to go to a break. What about the prospect of Justin Fairfax, the lieutenant governor being governor? Is there any sense that with the people you had a discussion with, they would rather have Ralph Northam, who they feel you might be more apt to do things now to show he's changed, than someone who's actually African American?
Well, that's a great question. We did talk about that, and I love how Elie wrapped that part up, because at the end of the day, from a clarity standpoint, with the lieutenant governor stepping in and taking over and running forward, Northam still can do. I mean, I was thinking when Elie was saying that. I mean, he's a doctor. If he wants to, if he's changed and he's committed, then he can go and help the black community when it comes to medical issues. He can go and contribute his education and time and expertise in that sense to help underprivileged families, whether they be black, white, or whatever, to still help the cause. I think that him stepping out and letting the lieutenant governor step in, Dean, this is the thing that we as folks of color do too often, and Elie knows exactly what I'm about to say. We have to apologize for our greatness and for our ability to step forward. And if this brother's ready to step forward, well, damn it, let him step forward and let him take over and do his thing and build a consensus and make it known when he steps into that role, I'm about getting it done. You all need to get behind me. Let's go get some stuff done for our state, for our region, and for our country.
And that is why I just want to add, Richard, that is why I think Justin Fairfax is taking the right tact here of not pushing Northam out the door, of letting it be his. Justin Fairfax is a young African-American with his whole career in front of him, we think. We'll see. Right. And there is no reason for him to sully even the hem of his garment to push this man out the door. All right. So that I've written this on The Nation. Like the responsibility for getting rid of Ralph Northam does not fall to African Americans. It is we didn't wear the blackface. We didn't right. Like this is not our problem. It is 2019. We've got other issues that we are concerned about. Can't waste time still explaining to white people why blackface is bad. So Ralph Northam and his people need to come to the independent decision of what the right thing to do is, without having a Justin Fairfax or a Barack Obama have to put the final, shiv in the back here.
Richard, I got to go to break.
Shove in the back. I meant shove.
Richard, thanks for your call, my friend. It's always nice chatting with you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dane. Be good.
You too. Let's take a quick break. Come right back with our friend Elie Mystal right here on the Dean Obeidallah Show.
The Dean Obeidallah Show.
I think Trump clips that they play on the media should come with a health warning saying that if you watch this, you'll get dumber. Never has somebody said so much stupid in so little time as Donald Trump does.
SiriusXM Progress.
to the Dean Obeidallah Show on SiriusXM Progress.
And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live right here, Monday, February 4th. Elie Mystal is here. By the way, tomorrow night, Joe Sudby will be covering live the State of the Union, so I hope you'll stick around if you so choose. At least come back and listen to Stacey Abrams if you don't listen to Trump's State of the Union here. And the next 3 nights, I'll be in D.C. We'll be on Capitol Hill interviewing members of Congress. We'll be doing live shows. We're playing a lot of the interviews over the next 3 days. So, Elie, I asked you a question in the break that I had written about for CNN, and it was a small line in the article, but it was sort of my sentiment that on this issue, the community that's wrong should be deciding, is there forgiveness or not? Because my article was really about evolving and transformation and redemption, which is important things in our society. Things are not the right word for it, but you know what I'm saying? It's an important concept in our society that we have to encourage that. But we were talking about, should the African-American community be leading this, or should it be the white community calling for Northam to step down?
Yeah, so I think when you talk about forgiveness, it's African-American community maybe is in the pole position to decide whether or not we're going to forgive if he's asking for it, which I still am not sure he is. Okay. But if he's asking for it, then right. But in terms of the actual politics of it, right, it is absolutely, positively not on African-American politicians to do this work. It is not on us to do the emotional labor of this work. It is not on us. We have literally too many other things to concern ourselves about in 2019 than stopping the whole class to explain to the slow person why blackface is still a bad thing, right? There's other things to do. And so putting it on the African-American political community, putting it on Justin Fairfax to push him out the door, or Barack Obama, or all these other people, that's just not right. It's gotta be. This is such an obvious thing that white people too can figure out that Ralph Northam needs to resign because he wore blackface, right? That's not a hard thing. Does not require a master's degree in racial tolerance, all right? The Ralph Northam, I don't know who is telling Ralph Northam to stay, but that person needs to stop. His own people need to understand, do what his wife did and be like, this is inappropriate, right? And put a stop to this, right? We have to stop. I come at this from I went to predominantly white schools. I was usually the only one or one of the only African Americans in my class all the way through, all from grade school to law school. And so often, a racial issue would come up or a racial case would come up. We would talk about Robert's decision in Shelby County, or we would talk about, some of the civil rights era cases. And it's the whole class stops and looks at you for your take. And it's you read it too. You read the same I did. You tell me what you think. I know what I think. I don't see why you're all looking at me to give you, do you think what do you think they're looking to? Blackie take on what's going on here. It's pretty for obvious things. Now, there are some issues where I feel like my take as an African American is truly providing in a classroom setting a different experience, a different way of looking at the issue, a different perspective, where I feel my perspective as an African American is valuable. Was slavery bad? Is not one of them, right? Should you put shoe polish on your face? Is not one of them. Is the Klan good or bad? Is not one of them, right? This is not a question that you need to come into my emotional headspace and wait for me to weigh in on. You, the white person, are perfectly capable of figuring that out for yourself. So with Ralph Northam, white people are perfectly capable of figuring out this man cannot lead Virginia without having to basically blaming black people, blaming Justin for, he could have stood in there, but Justin Fairfax betrayed him. No, I don't want to hear any of that. Ralph Northam himself needs to figure this out, and if he needs to be pushed, then there are more than enough white people in Virginia who can do the pushing.
I think it's such a great point you make about Justin Fairfax, and why I love doing this show, and I'm being completely sincere in this, I've learned in the last year and a half of doing this show specifically, so much about other communities. Even though I have countless friends who are African American and Latino and LGBT and stuff, you don't have these real passionate conversations about politics all the time, but here we do. And I was on MS yesterday afternoon in one of those kind of wandering hours where no one really watches. But you're on, but it was fine. And the anchor said, well, why isn't Justin Fairfax pushed him. I go, and I didn't even engage that. I sort of went through something else because I didn't think, I'm like, big deal. But what you just said makes I wish I had this conversation with you before, because I would have said, it's not his job.
Right.
It should be white Americans, white leaders in the community saying, and they were calling out, because I said, look, everyone left and right, I said left and right and black and white or something like that are all calling from the step down. So I said, it's not on one person. But your response is even better and more nuanced, and it makes more sense when you say it to me. Why should Justin Fairfax use any political capital to call on something that is so clearly obvious? Yep. And you have the Black Legislative Caucus and the NAACP and the mayor of Richmond, who LeVar Stoney, who's actually his mentor, who brought him into politics, and you got to step down. Like 5 days ago, you got to go.
You've got every 2020 Democratic presidential nominee.
Right.
So, we've got.
That's the least instructive to me. But still,
but we've got everybody is saying this, right? We don't need to have his successor even give the appearance of greedily pushing him. When Justin Fairfax is going to have his own problems, and he's going to have his own caucus, and he's going to have his own issues that he has to deal with, and that he has to be a person who, when he gets this job, because he's going to get this job,
it looks likely,
right? That can honestly say, I am here to bring people together. I am here to move past this. It's harder to do that. It's harder to pivot back to the togetherness if the last thing people saw you
was pushing the other guy out.
Out of the street.
Let's take a quick break. We'll come right back after this.
Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127. Dean Obadala Show on Sirius XM Progress 127.
Come back for a minute. Back, Dean Obadala Show. We got about a minute left. Elie, Mystal, I want to thank you, my friend, for coming in. I've sincerely, personally learned more about. No, we're progressives. We want to learn. The right likes echo chambers, and I'm not being dismissive or condescending. That's the truth. They like hearing the same thing over and over. I like to learn. I feel like we can always learn from whatever age you are. And I learned a lot from you tonight. And Richard who called, but you and Danielle as well in different ways. And the callers, Claudette, the first call from Virginia was like, I want him to stay. I'm from Virginia, African American. It's been a learning night for me a lot. I hope for listeners as well.
We're not a monolith.
No, that's fair enough. That's just in. So that's off the list too. Blackface has been off the list for a long time, but calling black people a monolith. Thanks, folks, for tuning. We'll be back tomorrow. All new live show. I'll be coming to you live from D.C. If all goes well, we'll have a few members of Congress tomorrow. We're recording on the Hill. Then Wednesday and Thursday, tons of members are coming. We have like 11 or 12 over the next 3 days on the show. Plus, Neera Tanden tomorrow. We're going to interview in her office at Center for American Progress. I'm on Twitter at Dean Obeidallah. Elie, where are you on Twitter?
At Elie, ELIE, NYC.
All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. Elie, thanks very much for being here. Have a great night.